We are live on YouTube as well. I just started streaming our conversation. So anyone that's unable to join our Zoom now can join the YouTube whilst we.
Okay. The way of the world, how technology has changed us. And accessibility.
It's really something. I mean, the world keeps becoming smaller and smaller. Everything becomes so easy for us to access now. Things that are already, I remember back in the days when my uncles, my brothers used to travel abroad. There was nothing like Facebook. There was nothing like WhatsApp and all these voice over IP systems that we have now. You typically have people record a whole VHS of messages from the UK, from the US, and send it down. It should take about like a month or two to get here, and then we'll take time and listen to all their messages from abroad. It was fun. But these days, hey, here we are speaking in real time. It's all good. It's all good, and I mean, we're enjoying it. What can we say? I think we have just about a minute to start. Hopefully, we should have some more people join us. We have Gifty and Anikia with us tonight. Hezekiah Hakizimana Jerome is also joining us now. So good evening once again, everybody. Tonight, we are being joined by Marcia. Correct me if I get it wrong. I think the one that I most likely will get right is Bailey, but Marcia Brissett.
Yeah,
Bailey.
That's it.
Oh, I got it right, huh?
Yeah.
She's popularly known as the Black Dyslexic. She's recently been identified as being amongst the top 50 influential neurodivergent women in 2022. She's a narrative changer and Forbes featured speaker. An author, she co-founded a British Dyslexia Association Cultural Perspective Committee. She's an observer of the BDA Executive Board, and she's been a guest editor in the October 2022 issue of the BDA Contact magazine. Marcia is an advocate, a champion of dyslexia and neurodiversity. She has the passion to empower others who are neurodivergent to find their voice, especially from marginalized communities. And she talks about her own lived experience as a Black dyslexic woman. Welcome once again, Marcia. Like I said, tonight is going to be all about a conversation about you, I mean, everything. So I know I have introduced you pretty much, but would you like to take some time to also talk about yourself a little bit?
Yeah, I hope the noise is okay. Just let me know if there's any interference, because life is still going on in the background.
You're fine, you're completely fine.
So good evening, everybody. My name is Marcia, has been mentioned. Thank you for introducing me. I really appreciate that. When you say that kind of list of all the things that I'm involved in or are doing, it just kind of takes my breath away every time, because I remember the Marcia who was at primary school, which is like from 5 to 10 or 11, where I didn't feel so confident about myself, and I felt really that I didn't belong. Now, so just to give you a little bit of context, so my parents are from Jamaica, and we're of African descent, but where my parents have grown and born was in Jamaica, in the Caribbean. And there's something different about me being born in Britain, that's where I was born. And so I've got that Black Britishness and that heritage, but I've also got the identity of African Caribbean or African descendant. So there's a whole mix, and it plays out differently to what I have at school and what my identity is at home. It may be different in different ways. You can resonate, but it's different because I'm from a European, kind of centric in terms of the things I'm taught, the things I see is from a European centric. And sometimes in Africa, that's also the case in different ways, but there's more Black people than there is in Europe in that sense. Do you understand? So when I talk for some of that kind of lived experience in that context, and it may not be the same experiences for everybody back home in Ghana. I have been to Ghana, oh gosh, a long time ago, and I've been to like Wongatanga, Tamale, Tama, Volta region.
You should come back, really.
Cape Coast, Emelina. Emelina is the castle, isn't it? But I've been to Kumasi as well. So I've been to Ghana, and it felt very at home. So thank you for having me in Ghana, for the Ghana viewers in particular. I just want to say thank you for, having me here. So let me just tell you a little bit more about me just briefly. So that my parents are of Jamaican descent. I was born in Britain, in London, in a place called East London. I won't say any more unless anybody wants to know where East London is, but it's a part of London. And my parents, I guess, was amazing in the sense that they wanted the best for me, but they didn't understand about dyslexia, which wasn't really identified then when I was going to school, dyslexia. So I would say for the early part of my education, I felt very isolated and couldn't understand why I wasn't reading like my peers. I didn't understand, but I felt marginalised, and I felt that I couldn't really express myself, but I knew I wanted to learn. I loved school, but I felt that school didn't love me because I just couldn't understand how to maneuver or find my place in the school setting, no matter how I tried. And it was very hard for me because I had a great imagination. I had the desire, the passion, but I couldn't get it just couldn't work for me. And in the end, what I did, I selectively muted at school, which just generally means that I chose not to speak because there's so much trauma that was going on for me at school and not feeling part of something. Sorry about the background, because this was the noise wasn't here at the beginning. I just felt that I couldn't take part. I couldn't access the learning. So when the teachers would ask me to read, I just would clang up, and my throat would get dry, and I'd be hoping that something would happen, like the bell would ring. And I'm just thinking, why would the teacher ask me to read when they know that I was having real challenges with that? Wouldn't it be better if those people who could read, then you could model them and then learn from them? But that never happened. So I just became very quiet, very insular, and I just kind of hovered through school. And I always remember one of the things that my teacher said at the end of the year before we go to secondary school or high school. My teacher said to my parents I would never academically achieve. So they really ripped me off because they couldn't understand why I wasn't learning the way they thought they would learn. I should learn like my peers, and I couldn't understand neither. But it was a teacher's right, what's meant to be helping you. One of the things that I just want to share with you, how culture really does help or play a part sometimes. I mean, we've got the elements for some of us who know about discipline and the strictness of things for some of us of African Caribbean or African descent, where there's kind of a firm way of bringing up our children. I had elements of that, but I also had my parents and my grandparents who kind of educated me about my ancestral roots. That gave me a little bit more identity being in Europe. And also they used to say you've got to work twice as hard. So you've got to remember that was some of my resilience to kind of helping me. So with those kind of elements from my cultural background, that helped me to persevere and find my voice in a way, even when I didn't feel I had one, when I felt I was invisible. So when my teachers told my parents I wasn't going to academically achieve, I thought, that's not me. There's a light at that tunnel and I have faith. So that's what's going to see me through. So that's how I started to navigate myself through. But at this point, we're here to talk about dyslexia. At this point, I didn't know I was dyslexic. I wasn't diagnosed with dyslexia until I was 16. Let's put away the fact that I had secondary school, it just kind of failed me. I didn't really get any qualifications. Can you imagine being at school, but you're not getting qualifications? But what I find with the education system, I'm not sure how the system is now in Ghana from when I was there over 20 odd years ago. But what I found, it's a kind of like a rope learning. It's very rigid. We have to sit in rows, but not all of us learn in that way. And also, we don't all read learning phonics. I'm a very visual learner. And what I discovered when I was diagnosed at 16, there's different ways of learning, whether it's kinesthetic, multisensory learning, visual learning, auditory learning. But sometimes in the school system, they do a certain thing, they kind of dictate to you, this is what you've got to learn, then you've got to do it. But not everyone can process the way we learn in these ways. Yeah. So I've had to learn all of that myself initially before I got any professionals to really assess me. So you hear what I'm saying. So there's a whole aspect, and I know I've heard this so many times, not just general in Africa. Sometimes the way we're learning different ways, or the teacher tells you what to do and you've got to then regurgitate that information. That's fine, but how do we get that information in different ways for people who may learn? We all got our different ways and strengths, haven't we, in learning? I might be visual, you might be auditory, but we have to then just do the main system. That's why I think the system does need to be updated in the way I think it's outdated in the different ways that we can learn through technology, etc. So just before I sort of go on and give you a little bit more of my story before I go on, one of the things I think was key for me is that my government and politics teacher said to me, Marcia, the way you talk and express yourself, you're very articulate, you get A's every time, but when it comes to writing it down, it's not quite the way you're expressing it verbally. And he said, I think there could be something more going on for you phonologically, the way you're processing. And obviously I hadn't been taught at this point to fully write a full comprehensive essay, and I'm 16 now, but I was still getting through and passing some of the routines of the way of learning. I sort of kind of modeled things and I got through. So when I went for this assessment, and then I went on to have an educational psychologist assessment, it was then that I was told I was dyslexic. And then it was that moment, that eureka moment, that I thought, I'm not stupid anymore. I'm not stupid. All this time I was struggling, the tears, the trauma that one can have and put on themselves about how we should be. It was then I found dyslexia. Dyslexia found me. And that's when I started to believe in myself much more, because there was something to it. I knew there was something different about me, but I didn't quite know what it was. So I'll put a full stop there. So if you've got any thoughts or want to bring something back that you want me to elaborate on, just to give you a bit, but I've done a snapshot, everybody, of a quick bit of my journey so far in my life, from the fact that, you know, I think my culture helped me in some aspects to have a bit of belief, learn about my identity, my history, which at the time I wasn't being taught in the school system that I was part of, because it was more about the European-centric history. And sometimes that's really important to have the understanding about you can achieve in different ways, and seeing your history. It's really helpful, and also having positive role models. But that's not something I saw growing up in the 80s, which is when I grew up in the UK. There wasn't much of people who looked like me, and I think that's something that is important to say. I was going to
ask you that though, that how was it like in school? Did you have a lot more people that looked like you? How was diversity like way back then when you were going to school, and how did you process it when you got to know you were dyslexic? I mean, over here, we always complain that education here is one size fits all, because irrespective of whoever you are, irrespective of your learning disability or irrespective of your challenges, you're supposed to learn and comprehend, write and produce the same results just as everybody is producing. So I was going to ask, how did you go through all that? And one, how did you process it when you finally got to know you were dyslexic? And how was diversity like back in school?
Okay, so there's a few things you're asking me. The first thing I will say to you, I failed school when we talk like secondary school. I don't know if it's called high school in Ghana. I can't remember now, but that Pacific, I think if you're looking at A's and B's, I got 1A, between A to C, I got 1B. And then the rest was D's, E's, F. But listen, at the end of the day, I wasn't reaching my full potential because I didn't have the right resources and what we call, I don't know if they call it accommodation like they do in America, but reasonable adjustments, the right support and mechanism to help me to learn the way that best serves me, to empower me to feel confident. My confidence was very low because you've got to remember, when I'm like 7, 8, 9, I was only then starting to realize there was something different. Before then, it was more about playing. Playing is an amazing thing. Curiosity, you know, being creative. That was a great time for me because that's where I blossomed. That's where my strengths were. But when it came to moving up, when you're in 10, it gets a bit, at the time in the 80s, it gets more serious. The maths and everything, that's when I really struggled. So for me, that's the one aspect. I think my short-term memory, because we haven't talked about dyslexia, but dyslexia can affect your memory, well, your short-term memory. For me, I can talk for myself, because one of the things I want to say about dyslexia as well, it's authentic to the individual, and that's why we still don't have a definition. When I was doing my master's and I did one of my modules, it was I found 35 different definitions of dyslexia. So there isn't an agreement because it's so authentic and unique to the individual, and that's what I'm saying. There's not one glove fits all for a dyslexic. And in with dyslexia, so for me, my dyslexia affects me. I can read, I can write, but there's things that I learned to read visually. So I read the words as a whole and as one word, as a picture. I don't break down in phonics. I can do like 3-letter words like cat, dog, but anything beyond that, which is for the sequences changes in a way, I can't read them. So I learn visually the words, if that makes sense. I learn the words visually. And I can learn the words in chunks, but I can't phonologically break down words. So these are things that I've had to learn about the way my brain processes, my neurodiversity, which is what she was calling about the way the neurosciences and the way my brain works. And, you know, it is how I've had to learn to be the best version of me and feel confident about me, which I didn't have initially, because like you said, in Ghana, it's one way, but we just generally need to look at learning in different ways, whether it's in Ghana, whether it's in Britain. I think there's some things that are very outdated. You know, that linear and rote learning is just for one type of thinker.
Exactly.
And there's different types of thinkers, and the way we think, you know, we think about some people. They say that Einstein was, if you know of Einstein, he was dyslexic. If that's the case, if he wasn't able to be creative in the way that he was, would he have done the things he have done and be able to be the amazing person that we still talk about today? I'm sure there's other philosophers that people don't know they were neurodiverse in that way or dyslexic at that time, but I'm sure there's people that we think who take risk. I'm a risk taker in lots of things. That's why dyslexics make good entrepreneurs. They take risk and they just think a little bit outside the box. And you know, there's some research from the Cass Business School in the UK, and whoever's watching, but I can't remember the statistics, but it was showing that there was quite a high percentage of entrepreneurs who were dyslexic. Now, there could be many reasons for that, because they don't work in the work system, that we're not even touched on that yet, but also it's that kind of, as I said, disrupted way of thinking, which makes good business sense, because you're looking at all, you know, innovative ways to work and create that from the way your mind works. But it doesn't always work in the school. It doesn't always work because we've got a certain way of learning that we have to be robotic in it, and it doesn't work necessarily it didn't work for me, and that's why I didn't pass. So that's a little bit, I think I might have gone off track, and that's sometimes the way my brain is. But the other thing you asked me was about diversity. Now, as I said, I grew up in the 80s. The diversity, there was quite a lot of Caribbean children in the area I lived in. Few children like from Nigeria, more likely, and a little bit of Ghana, but very small. And then there was quite a dominant white community and a few other different communities. So it was very more grew up in a white environment, but was quite had a dominant because of Caribbeans. I mean, one of the things that the area I grew up at that time, it was talked about that it was a social, economically low working class area, with what we'd call deprivation. And so one of the things that I don't know if in Ghana you talk about, or it comes up a lot, but depending on the regions you live in, different parts of Ghana, but there's this thing that I talk about a lot in a lot of my talks, and it's about the intersectionality. So it could be your environment. So that has an impact probably in your education, to what kind of type of education you have. Then if you're part of a different ethnic group, that could have, depending on where you are in the world, that could have an impact too. And the languages you speak, to your accessibility. So I know my path was almost written out, almost like a statistic, that I'm from this particular area. People in this area, they're low deprivation, low income, that you're going to be the statistic of this kind of person. But I've not gone to be this statistic. I wasn't going to be that statistic. So I hope that gives you a little bit of aspect of that. But then you had to then think about who you are as a person, and who you are as a Black young girl, as a woman, and then on top of that layer, being dyslexic. Discrimination, racism is very real, and the infrastructure in that and how it operates and shows up within the UK is very real. So there's things that I've had to learn to just kind of build that resilience. So I'm hoping that you understand that. So, you know, my parents would talk about things, how it's hard. And as I said earlier on, my grandma said to me, I had to work twice as hard. And now I know what that meant. As I got older, you have to work twice as hard, because when she came to UK, she had to work twice as hard to achieve or to get anything. And she wanted to prepare me. And I must have been about 6 or 7. She was already preparing me and building me to say, you as a young Black girl, you're going to have to work twice as hard to find your way in this world because of who you are and the society or the country you live in. So I hope that answers your question. I hope I've managed to answer that question.
It surely does. Given that you were advised to work twice as hard, did you receive any kind of support from the family, from your society, like at work, in school, especially when you found out that you were dyslexic? Were there any specific support system that you had to rely on, or were you exposed to any kind of dyslexic opportunities that are out there? I think one of the things that I got from what you said was that quite a lot of the entrepreneurs that are disrupting the economic and societal things now are dyslexic.
Well, I'm not saying that per se. I couldn't say that exactly, but what I was saying is that some research shows that there's a high proportion of entrepreneurs are neurodivergent or dyslexic.
But before now, and I think that a lot of people didn't know about this, and a lot of people didn't really know about dyslexia and all. Given that in growing up, you got to know when you were 16.
Yeah, and I'm very fortunate to know lots of people I know who are friends of mine who are dyslexic, didn't know until they went to university.
Oh, wow.
So they had there's various reasons for that. I was very fortunate because I was pushing at the time at college because I wanted to learn, and I was adamant something was going to happen because I was pushing. I don't know what it was, but that light, that faith, whatever it was, I just kept on maneuvering around, jumping over hurdles and trying to find my way. You said something to me and it's gone from my mind. I'm really sorry. You said to me, and I really wanted to answer that. Oh yeah, it was about my family. Now, my family came, my mum came here when she was 8 from Jamaica. My dad came here maybe when he was 10 or 11. So they was predominantly gone through the system. But you've got to understand, when my parents came here, it was said, and my grandmother, no Blacks, no dogs, no Irish. So they're coming from a real different era of coming into the UK, and they really didn't understand the education system and was fearful of it in a way because they had such a negative experience at first coming into the UK in the 50s. So they had quite a negative and didn't really understand the system. And my parents, I think I didn't have any pressure, as I know from some of my peers, some of my, I would say my brothers and sisters from other parts of countries like Africa, where sometimes there was a real thing about you had to be a doctor, lawyer, I didn't have that kind of thing. Okay, so what that gave me was the platform to find my own true self about what I wanted to be. And I would say that my parents have been instrumental, because what they did was just provide me with unconditional love. They just loved me, and they knew that something wasn't right because the school told me, the school told them, but all they did was just share the love and just give me love. And I think that was just really fundamental for me. There was no pressure about I had to be any particular profession. You know, when I talk to some of my friends, and my friends from different parts of the world and globe of African descent, there was pressures on becoming certain professions, but I didn't have that. And I think for me, that was really helpful. And I think that they just supported me and didn't, you know, always, of course, my parents were the best for me, but they knew there was something different about me, but they didn't know what it was, but all they could do was support me. So whatever I did, they would be happy. All I think they wanted is to make sure you do your best, you follow the rules, you be obedient, you know, you don't bring no problem to the house.
That's quite typical of Black parents, you know.
Yeah, exactly. Those are the kind of things you knew. And I grew up in a time when children were seen and not heard kind of thing. So you don't talk, you don't say nothing, you cry inside, you don't show them up. You know, those are the things that I know. And that's the discipline, what helped me, I guess, and the guidance I got, what really was instrumental. That's why I say culture can be very important to any community group where you come from. I think it's really important. We don't talk about it enough and celebrate it. That's that part of your identity, what makes you that. And that helped me being in the UK to find my way in a way, because I had my Britishness, but I also had my heritage of African Caribbean, which helped me to come through some things what were sometimes quite traumatic, if that makes sense. So, and it's sometimes you'll find yourself being different people. So I'm a Black woman, I'm of African Caribbean descent, I've got African heritage that wants me to seek and search for that identity. But I also know that being in the UK, I didn't always see things that look like me. And that's why it's important for me to have identity with my family, my community, that made me feel that I belonged. Because there's so many intersections and layers when in my experience of seeing things that didn't look like me, books, history, it didn't relate to me. And sometimes it made me feel like I didn't belong somewhere. And as a child, having to do all of those kind of thinking and conceptualizing yourself in different ways and, you know, trying to be your whole self and be authentic, I'm telling you, it's a journey. And
I can imagine.
Yeah, and then you're working through your dyslexia. So just to sort of put it back into context, you know, my teacher told me that I'll never achieve. I'd like to share that, not because I'm not very good at celebrating things, but I'd like to say that since then I have managed to get 3 degrees, and that's a degree in information science, and librarianship, and then I did a degree in career guidance because I wanted to help others. So I became a careers advisor, and I've worked in the education sector now for 30 years. And then and in the last 4 years, I think 2017, 2018, I did a master's in special education. So what I want to say to you, and what I want to say to people to kind of that myth that being dyslexic, some people call it they've got superpowers. All I can say is that I think different, but I celebrate that now more than I've ever done before. Before, I didn't feel confident about myself. And I did develop things like imposter syndrome, which is like when you don't feel that it's really you. I'd be doing a lecture as a tutor and I'd be thinking, Marcia, what do you know? And I would question that, because you've got to remember the journey that I had from when I was young, being told you're not good enough. It started to trigger things in me that made me always self-down, and your confidence, your self-esteem. And you'll find for some people, this is something they're still working with in their adulthood because of the negativity and the experience they had in the school system. School is so important to the foundation before you go to the workplace. And sometimes the workplace feels just so like school. And it's that the kind of structures, it hasn't got that inclusivity about working in a way that can fit for everybody. So I've I would say to you, I've learned so much and I'm grateful for the experiences. I wouldn't change my dyslexia, but my dyslexia is authentic to me. Now, dyslexia, I don't know if everyone knows about what dyslexia, but for my dyslexia shows up that, I don't have things like move arounds. I don't necessarily have to have different color layers of paper. I don't necessarily have to have that, but I can see if I'm under a lot of pressure, sometimes it just kind of looks blank to me, but that's not an everyday occurrence for me. Some people got like visual dyslexia when they need different kind of color filters or paper. Like, it can be helpful, yeah, for sure, but it's not necessarily the thing that really gets me. Mine is really reading some of the words. I can't read the words, as I've said to you before, I have to memorize them. So I manually put those words in my memory bank. But you've got to remember, this is over years. I'm a big person now, so I've learned lots of words that I can kind of get on in the world. I can read reports, I write reports, I've written essays. I've found strategies and techniques over the years that helps me to aid me, because I just feel that the way we are in society, it's like it can sometimes fit in the medical model, and I would love to talk about that more, and even if somebody could say anything, because I find that sometimes back home or in Ghana, in some places, there's such a more of a medical kind of approach, and the social model, which is what makes me liberated by having things. I'm having to have things adapt to me, but if I didn't, that would be more of a kind of more access. There'll be more access, right? But the whole medical world, it defines you as a condition, but I'm designed by design. If you think about years ago, everything was visual. Language is still a new kind of thing, right? Yeah. So if you think, if I was years ago, I don't know where my ancestor would be years ago, but say it was in Africa and we were doing things visually and drawing things and creating things in a different way, dyslexia wouldn't come into the picture.
Exactly.
Do you see what I mean? So it's the way our world is being constructed and designed that my dyslexia shows up, that my brain works in a different way. But if you was to get me out in this, to survive, I'll be going out, finding my way to create a different way to create something, and then be able to do that. And dyslexia wouldn't be my barrier.
That's true. So I actually want to ask you two questions.
Go for it. I hope the group's following me. I hope the audience following to you today. So I hope they
pretty much are. So, sometime later, I would ask them if they have any questions for you.
Yeah.
Two things. Having gone through the journey that you did, do you have any advice for parents that just found out that their kids are dyslexic? That's one. And two, would you proffer any tips or what probably, let's say, life hacks that people that have just also found out that they are dyslexic would have to go through to navigate the whole journey? Because I think that in my point of view, it can be overwhelming sometimes. It really can be overwhelming. So
you need to ask me one question at a time, because already I've forgotten the questions, because I'm trying to focus on the two questions, but my brain's only trying to do one.
Don't worry, I'll go over it again.
Just do the first one, because that will be helpful. Yeah.
So the first one, what would be your advice for parents that recently found out that their kids are dyslexic?
Okay, so what I need to share with you as well, what's important to say, dyslexia is genetic. Yeah, so it may skip people in the family. Some people say, well, I've not known anybody in my family to have dyslexia. This is the first time, but there is a genetic, and there's research around that. So my mum's dyslexic, I'm dyslexic, my daughter's dyslexic. So it's very genetic. When I was doing research with my first degree, they were saying it's mostly men, but because a lot of research done on men, we don't know really about women.
Right.
And so at that time, it was said that, it was more boys, but I think it's because more research was done on men. And we're not going to get into the gender thing, but I think maybe that's why the findings were clearly focusing on men. But you could think 3 generations and we're all dyslexic. And all of our strengths and things in different ways. Do you understand? So what I would say, it took me 2 years to get a diagnosis, my husband and I, with my daughter, but I could detect it because I've known the journey already, and I could see the patterns and the way she was showing up in the way she was learning in the school system. So for me, you are an expert on your child. If you detect something's not specifically right in the way that they're learning, don't ever feel that your child is stupid or put labels like that, because I know we can do it, or people can do that to us. You're an expert. Go with your gut and try to follow it through. If you have awareness of assessments and diagnosis, if you want to go down that route, please do that if it's going to help your child to be able to access resources, adjustments where possible. I've heard from a lot of my friends that back home sometimes it's not always that way, that the systems have these other supports necessary directly, and it may be that you have to get private tutors. I know there are different organizations like your own in Ghana now, but persevere, don't give up. If you feel there's do some research, read. Now we've got, like, we can just Google something. Not to say that we want to do that. There's sometimes kind of assessments online, but I always think eventually go through a professional. If you can find an educational psychologist or somebody who's a qualified dyslexia teacher to get your overall, but there are kind of online screenings just to see what it is. But you are the expert in your child. What I didn't tell everybody today, I actually work for the local authority now, and I support parents and young people who have got special education. So it doesn't just mean dyslexia, it doesn't just mean autism, it doesn't just mean dyspraxia, ADHD, all of these other things what come under neurodiversity. It could be other learning differences, but it can also have more visual disabilities, wheelchair bound, lifelong conditions. So I do that as my day job. So what I would say to you, trust your gut and believe in you, and you have to keep going back and saying, hello, it's me again to the school. Don't go away and don't feel a pain. But obviously you have to have tact and strategies to talk into our education and schools, who can come across sometimes as being the experts, but you are also an expert and you mustn't forget that. And then just seek support in professionals like Africa Dyslexia Organisation. Seek support, talk, share. Yes, sometimes the closest people to us are not going to understand, and they're not the people you need to be talking to. Because there's judgment, kind of perception, and they're judging you. You don't need that. What you need is the right support for your child. So seek that. Speak to people that you feel you can trust, or organisations like Africa Dyslexia. But as I said, we are experts on the children, and that's how I got a diagnosis with my daughter, because they were just saying she's a high achiever, she's at peer, but if she's in par with her peer, can you imagine if she has the right support, how she can reach her potential more? It's not, she's not having the disability, it's the structures and the systems what's making her have that disability, because of the way we assess in children, and it's got to be by these tests and testing your memory. If I could write an essay by talking, I'm getting an A star. Let's just put it out there, right? So if there's different ways of assessing us, yes, you may want to do exams, but there's other ways we can do assessments. Like when we used to do presentations as part of your course, they don't do those kind of things. It's like less and less. It's all about assessments from the moment you're 5, you're doing a test. But why can't we do it in different ways? Why can't we test people in different ways? I've seen children who are high achievers academically, and they're logical thinkers, they've got amazing memories. But if you put them in a teamwork scenario, they can't do it.
True.
So we've got different strengths, and we've got different things that we can bring to the table. So please, parents, just you don't want your children to have the trauma, if possible, because of the system. So we've got to work with it. And if you can afford to have extra support or networks with other parents who may have children who are dyslexic, please use that support mechanism to support each other, is what I would say. I hope that's answering the question, but do seek organizations like yourselves to start to build that confidence in yourself, to know, because sometimes, as I said, from a cultural perspective, there's these whole stigmas and taboos around learning difference or difficulties, or we hear these words like from old school, like dumb and all these kind of things. They don't exist, because we all are authentically unique. We're designed to do what we need to do on this earth. And we just need to find that and tap into it. But we need the support. Like I said, my parents gave me the love, and that's sometimes all we can give, to nurture, which is what schools are meant to be. But sometimes they can be soul destroyers as well, because of the discipline and the way that school's culture is set up, but it doesn't fit the way we're designed. Does that help? I hope I've answered the question. I might have gone on a little bit.
You've actually answered about 3 more questions I was going to ask. And that's just wonderful.
That's typical. That's typical. You see, it's the way my brain works. It's good for interviews. It's good for interviews. You'll be like,
I can imagine. So since you've answered most of my questions, and looks as if okay. So one more.
Oh, so impressive, your journey. Thank you.
Okay.
They said, can you explain something? I saw something at the end of that. I missed it. It just went.
Okay. So can you explain further on the fact that you memorize words by learning them, as in visual learning?
Yeah.
Is it a different type of dyslexia which needs to be observed?
No. So it's a strategy. So when I first got diagnosed at 16, I had a lovely, amazing lady called Jenny McWhinney, and she was a specialist tutor of dyslexia. And so she's got obviously training to know how to get the best out of me, and how through my assessment, through my diagnostic assessment, it will say where my strengths are, my weaknesses, my speed or phonological processing, my speed level and reading things is really slow. But to answer your question, so it's an exercise where, oh, my battery's gonna go. It's an exercise, I need to find my charger, sorry. It's an exercise where you say, like psychology, you write down that word. I could chunk it, okay, so psy, P-S-Y-C, and you chunk it and you then do the ology, O-L-O. So that's one element, but you're doing strategies to help your brain memorize and visualize those words. So what she used to do is you look at the words. Say, I'm going to make it easy for myself, okay? So I don't lose myself in the spelling. So you look at the word cat, okay? You look at it, you cover it, then you read it, and then you write it. Look, read, look, right. Cover, and read. So that strategy helps me to start memorize it. And one of the things that's really good for me is when I write it, because it seems that connection with my hand flow and my brain, it all kind of connects together. So I look at the word cat, I cover it, I might look at it again, and then I go to write. Now that strategy is I'm manually inputting into my brain that words, cat. I'm making it really easy, but it could be other words. And I made chunk words in order to see words like because. I can see the word be, I can see the word use. It sounds very long and complicated, but it's the way my brain can remember things that it will kind of trigger it to be able to spell the whole word or read the whole word, because I can see other letters in it. So it's kind of like tricking the brain. But the one that I'm answering the question for is the look, read, cover. So that's the manual, and I think that's what I'm answering. That I use the strategy of look, cover, and read. So that's how I manually put words in my hand, and it takes time and practice, but I don't need to do that so much now because I've gone past that. That was like 16, and I'm older than that now. So I've learned those strategies, and I've built them up over time and continuously, copying things and using the dictionary as well. I mean, I remember people said, well, if you can't spell, look in a dictionary. But how can I look in a dictionary? I can't spell the word. But I used to go through the dictionary and just look at words and visualize them, just as an exercise. Do you see what I mean? Yeah. So I'm hoping I've answered your question. Did I answer your question?
You definitely did. You definitely did. What advice will you give to parents who are in denial about their wards being dyslexic?
Sorry, the screen went. What
advice would you give parents who are in denial about their children being dyslexic?
But how can I give advice to someone who's in denial?
That's true.
It's about awareness. I think that's where the school comes in, if they do promote different learning differences. Hopefully having this conversation today, it may have some thought process to maybe a child being triggered by, there's something there, they're being triggered and they're just not getting past. So if you see a child and they're still reading that same thing and they can't read that piece, those are the kind of things, it may be a trigger, or they're saying things are moving around for them. These are the things that you might see, but it's very hard for me in the position I'm in to say if someone's in denial to be able to say how did they, because they're in denial, so they won't be looking or searching, right?
Exactly.
But this is why your work's important, and hopefully the more you're advocating and talking about it and doing talks, outreach in schools, and hopefully talking to parents, and hopefully parents are on here to maybe think about it and having that openness, because at the end of the day, this is a design feature. It's not that we're lacking anything, but the school system, when I was growing up, I know you can talk from my experience, I can't talk in Ghana, but it always came from a place of lack, that I haven't got something, but I have got lots to offer. But it always came that because I wasn't making the grades, but I wasn't making the grade because it wasn't accessible to me in the way that I could access it at that time, you know. I'm showing you now I can learn. Sometimes I'd love to do a PhD, but is that, sometimes I think, is that for me, or is it to prove something? The bottom line is that I know that I can learn. It's just the way that I learn and the way that I get to the same end goal as my peer who's got a really good memory.
Right.
Because we've all got our strengths and we've all got our purpose and place. Do you see what I mean? So I can't really personally, maybe somebody else could, but I don't know what I could suggest for somebody who's in denial. All I can say is that you need to think about your child. If we're in denial, not, you know, with my parents, they didn't have an understanding. Dyslexia was new to them. You know, for some people, it's like, that's not us. Black people don't get this. And there's all these kind of things. But all I can say is that dyslexia is real. It is the way we learn. Some people don't want to say it's a disability. That's fine, but it's a disability because the society has made it that way, because of the constructs and the infrastructure within our societies make it so. Remember, I went back to that. If I was in the Amazon or wherever, my skills, creating that fire, developing it, building it. I'm an engineer, you know. I can visualize it. One of my strengths is I think it could get to people sometimes. I see the end before I see the beginning. I'm not the person who reads the instructions. I don't read instructions. I've like built that without the instructions. So there's so many things that I can do that, yes, it's good to sometimes have instructions, but I can see the end goal before I see the beginning. So sometimes I have to draw myself back, or somebody might say, Marcia, I couldn't follow you. You've built the house and everything, and I'm still on the foundations. So we've got different things to offer. So as a parent, can you imagine it can be crippling if you don't give that child the opportunity to really fully express themselves. So I hope I'm answering in a roundabout way. It's hard if someone's in denial, but if your child is struggling, it could be an indication that how they're being taught doesn't work for them. Doesn't mean they can't get there, but it's the way they're showing up. It may be other phonological things. It doesn't mean it's necessarily dyslexia. Some people have real trouble with numbers. It could be dyscalculia. So there's a whole range of neurodiverse things about the way our brain works or processes, that it doesn't mean that it's bad, or someone's done something to your family and you've got a curse. It doesn't mean any of that. It just means we all function a different way. Yeah, does that make sense?
Right. Makes a lot of sense.
I hope I'm not putting anything on anybody and making any assumptions, but yeah.
No, I think you're right on point. You just hit the nail on its head.
So I want to give something to the audience, and it's something I learned on my master's, and it may be something if people are still seeking. Sorry about the background noise, but there was something. There's an author called Thomas West, and he talked about higher level thinking. Okay. And high level thinking, Thomas West believes that people with dyslexia struggle with low level thinking, and that's retaining facts, learning by rote learning, if you know what that is, and spelling. So those things fit with me. Retaining facts, I can retain facts if it's done in a way visually, like on cards, like a film, auditory, yeah, bring it on. But rote learning and learning those kind of systematic ways really makes me struggle and makes me then have to do other things to be able to get you know, to pass that exam or do whatever. And spelling, again, because of the way I see things, I'm not going to spell the word because I can't do the phonics. Now, high level thinking, so I just want to put this before we end. High level thinking is seeing the bigger picture, yeah, seeing patterns that others do not see, 100% me. being able to visualize solutions to the problem. Remember I told you, I can see the end product of that production before I see the beginning. Creativity, not everybody, some people who are dyslexic say they're not necessarily feel they're creative, but it's when we talk about creative, what does that look like? So thinking outside the box, that's where that comes from. Creating new knowledge. I'm always creating new knowledge. I'm making up things as I go along, but it's new and it's exciting sometimes to have some fresh idea. Conceptualizing thinking, understanding technical details. I did a science degree, an information science degree, which included firewalls, database, web designing. That really suits me because I've got that logical way of thinking and processing and putting things together. I'm very good at communication. So sometimes we compensate for the things we can't do, and it comes through our talking and communicating. And I'm really good at networking with people. I'm a real network and project manager. I like projects and I like to do things differently. And the other thing I want to say to everybody, that dyslexia can co-occur with other learning differences. So I'm dyslexic, I could be dyslexic, I could be dyspraxic. So a lot of my friends also are dyslexic and dyspraxic, and dyslexia is about coordination. I'm not going to go into that today, but it could be that someone can have that topic. Even though we're talking about dyslexia, it can co-occur with other learning differences. Dyslexia, dyspraxia, autism, ADHD, they could overlap. So you may not just, you could have traits of other neurodiversities, but you could also overlap with other neurodiversities, if that makes sense. And I think it's just important before we finish that I mention that as well. So you may not just have dyslexia, it could be other things. And we have to more have these conversations in Africa. And I'm just so excited and feel, total gratitude that I've been invited, because these are the kind of doglegs we should be connecting the dots and talking together more and more, because there is a cultural perspective and way how people in our communities understand language and also how they interpretate things. This is over years, the way we're seeing how languages and dyslexia is a new thing, or neurodiversity, new thing. So when something's new, it's like, where's this coming from? But it's always been there, but we may not see it that way because we may see somebody who's creative in a different way and not necessarily looking at it in the way from a Eurocentric viewpoint. Do you see what I mean?
Exactly. So I think that you've pretty much you like you rightly said, you see the end from the beginning. And I was actually going to ask you what was going to be your final words for people that are watching now and people that may watch the video later.
Okay.
It sounds as though you've already answered that.
No, I haven't. I've got more I can say. We could talk for 3-4 hours. I've got more to say.
I know.
Okay. I want to say to you is never give up. Keep pushing. But obviously, I think also do try your best to ask for help or find people you can trust. Because it took me a long time to trust, because my parents say you don't talk your business to anybody. So you have all these conflicting with your culture and then trying to get support. But I think if you can find someone you can trust and you can open to, that could be the starting point to help you. If you feel lonely or feel isolated, someone doesn't understand you, use Africa Dyslexia as an organization. And I want to share one thing. It's a positive thing that when I was younger at school, I envisioned of being a writer. And not only have I written my first book in an anthology with some other women called Pioneering Speak, I will be having my own first book come out, and it's about being dyslexic and Black in next year in 2023 in the summer. Now, can you imagine, as a child, I envisioned that was my desire, my passion, but I didn't know how I was going to go there. But remember I said about the light? So my thing to you is that I'm going to be an author in my own right, and I never gave up. So never give up on your dreams, your passions, your purpose. Yes, life can get in the way, our environment, our circumstances, but have that little light, that little golden thing of what is my purpose, and just keep pushing to that. But use your support mechanisms as well, wherever you can, and have that trust and faith in people. And sometimes it's not a mistake, it just means that was something you had to learn. Yeah.
Right. And it's been an amazing, almost an hour. I think it's beyond an hour since we started talking. It's been a wonderful time with you, Lady Marcia. And I'm actually planning and hoping to Rosa, that we should have you for the next one as well, because we can talk for 3 hours non-stop.
Oh, I can talk for England. I have to be, it's got to be sensible. It's got to be sensible. As long as you give me a structure, then I'll be fine. Because
I know. It's been great having you on, and actually we would love to have you back in Ghana sometime.
Oh gosh, please invite me to come over. You must have a conference or something. Then
we're planning to do that actually.
You see, I'm creating ideas. You see, I'm thinking outside the box. See, I'm showing everybody.
I know, and we really would love to have you when that is happening. We are looking to, so the whole month of October is going to be the Dyslexia Global Awareness Month.
Yeah.
Here in Ghana, we're having all that conversation about it. We're gonna have several events around the time. Yes. We're also looking to have like an in-person kind of global conference sometime in February next year.
Amazing.
We're hoping to get some people from the United States, the UK, and a couple more places. And I mean, a lot of people from across the region as well. So hopefully we'll run all these by you, whichever one works for you. We'd love to have you in Ghana.
Yeah, I'd love to come back.
Since you've been here before, it's just home for you. It's not like you're traveling somewhere else. It's just home for you. It
does feel home, and I say thank you. I want to say thank you for doing this. And this is how you change the narrative, by having these conversations. We don't know who we're going to touch, who's listening today or will listen later, and those are the parents that you may be reaching who are in denial, but as I said, we are an expert, and if we really touch in our heart and we're not thinking about what people think, we will know in ourselves that there's something that could be something like dyslexia that may be having an impact to why our child's not learning the way we think they should be. You know how it goes.
Yeah.
People have got expectations, but if we can just withdraw that and look at the child or that young person for who they are, they will know in themselves to talk, but you have to have that trust with them as well, for them to share how they're feeling, because they're scared sometimes of the school system. They're strict. You're gonna, it's so many different factors that you're playing, and you don't want to let people down, but this sometimes is cultural as well. I don't mean it in a negative way, but we feel scared. We don't want our children to be scared. We want them to be open and to learn. We want them to feel empowered. But how are we going to do that if we don't listen and shut them down to say, well, you're a D student and that's an A student and you're not that? So how are we going to help them to find their passion and their strengths and work with them?
Yeah, that's true. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you to everyone. Everyone, we couldn't hear their voices, but we could hear bits of noises around. Greetings to everybody at home. Since it's a bank holiday and you have family over, I'm not going to take much of your time, but from me and everyone at African Dyslexia Organization, a very big thank you. We are grateful that you honored our invitation to have a conversation tonight. And we look forward to having more conversations around this same topic. 100%.
Please keep having the conversations. Please keep changing narrative. We mustn't stop here. And as Black people, we need to continue to have these conversations, because dyslexia and neurodiversity is real, and we just need to work with it and embrace our children, our young people, and us as adults as well. There's adults who have been masking for years. We need to talk about the adult conversation. We've talked about children a lot today and my journey, but there's adults who are silent and somehow have navigated, maybe because they have the money to do that, and they've done things that they can do because they've got that option, but some who haven't. And we want to talk about the adults as well. So bring me back. Okay, take care. Thank you so much.
You too. Bye,
everybody. Thank you, everybody. Bye.
Bye.
Oh, bye. I've heard someone's voice. That's amazing. Bye.
You can unmute and say bye to Lady Marcia if you want to.
Bye. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you for coming and joining us.
Thank you too.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm always quiet.
Yeah, sorry, that's my nephew. Yeah, that's my nephew.
Bye.
Shall I leave or stay until the